You've really grown.
Yeah, but you're still bigger.
Here we have another one of those characters that I'm hesitant to even really call a villain, but unlike Golbez, he has enough agency in his situation for me to more seriously consider him for a high spot. Jecht is the father of Tidus, the main character of Final Fantasy X. He's the star player of the Blitzball team, the Xanarkand Abes. He's a raging alcoholic, a pretty big narcissist, and overall just kind of not that great of a parent. That's not to say he doesn't try, but he just never really got the memo that once you become a parent, it stops being all about you. One day he gets carried off to the parallel world of Spira. Jecht winds up tagging along with a summoner named Braska on his pilgrimage, in order to try to find a way home. Over the course of his travels, Jecht learned humility and the value of caring about others before yourself, and eventually, when they get to the end, he realizes that he won't be able to really get home. Remember when I brought up Sin earlier when I talked about Seymour a few videos back? Well, Braska embarked on this pilgrimage in the first place to obtain the summoned beast known as the Final Aeon in order to combat Sin. In order to summon the Final Aeon, the summoner needs to transform one of his guardians into it. And Jecht volunteers because he's accepted that he's never going to find a way home, and he figures he might as well do something meaningful with his life. Despite him successfully becoming the Final Aeon and defeating Sin, Sin's creator, Yu Yevon, takes over Jecht's new body and attempts to reform it into the new Sin. Jecht wants now to put a stop to this cycle, so now transformed into the new Sin, he returns to his home of Xanarkand and transports his son to Spira, hoping that he'll be able to find a way to permanently end the threat of Sin. Something I noticed about Final Fantasy games in general is that characters who appear primarily in flashback have a tendency to be the most interesting ones. Laguna from Final Fantasy VIII is a pretty good example, and Jecht is another one. His transformation from a self-centered abusive parent into a truly selfless hero is utterly tragic when he's transformed into an actual monster, and once you discover his true nature, it's surprisingly easy to feel the pain he's going through. As far as most of the narrative is concerned, his primary function is to be the source of Tidus' insecurities. Everything about Tidus' personality traces back to the way Jecht raised him, and in a way, he could be seen as sort of a mirror image of his father, as if he grew up specifically to avoid becoming like him. Throughout the entire course of the story, Tidus has to struggle with being connected to Jecht by the few who know that connection, and unlike his love interest Yuna, who's proud of being the daughter of Braska, Tidus is desperately trying to live down his relationship. It's kind of weird. Jecht is most effective when he's being a foil to other characters rather than being a great character in his own right, which he is. Like I mentioned before, he's technically being controlled by Yu Yevon, so I was hesitant to put him on the list, which, is the reason Golbez was so low. But we do clearly see at several points, both in his fixation with Tidus and the mechanics of the final boss, he has at least some free will left. Like I said before, his primary goal is to maneuver Tidus and his group into finally killing him and thus ending Yu Yevon's cycle of pain. It's left pretty ambiguous how much of his destructive actions are the result of Yu Yevon, and how much was intentional to achieve his goal. Is it a stretch? Maybe, but that interpretation is there if you really look for it. In the end, the thing that makes Jecht so compelling despite his monstrous appearance as Sin is just how human he is. In the past, he was a flawed human being with a lot of personal growth, and in the present, his relationships with Tidus and Braska form the emotional core of the game. Not bad for a self-centered sports star.